And we're live with my favourite Imogen.
Oh, aw. There's so many of us. How did you choose?
That's what I was going to say, that I don't know that many Imogens. But a very interesting person in our own right, and we'll be talking about that later on. But for the moment, for the first 10 minutes, because there are lots of people out there, so in a blunt way, imagine I'm Donald Trump in saying, how's your brain going, Imogen? You were about to tell us something interesting about a new skill that you've learned.
Yeah, it happened spontaneously. I was trying to read, and reading, since my brain injury, has been slow, and my tracking is slow. My recall is little, so I have to read things over and over again. I used to read books really quickly, many of them, and very academic books. And this was a big change. But anyway, so I started being able to read without verbalizing, and I've never been able to do that before. So I'm now reading a page in a couple of seconds.
Wow.
And, yeah, and my recall is really good too, as long as the subject isn't too unfamiliar.
That speed of reading a page in a second, were you able to do that before the accident?
No. I used to be able to just skim, and I would skip over all of the unimportant words, and my mind would just fill them in, and I would recall. But now I can actually just scan back and forth, all the way down the page, and just flip the page, and I'm getting it.
I'm going to show this video to Dario. So if you're watching, Dario, we have to make it happen where you can EEG Imogen to find out what magic is going on in her brain, the way the brain is adjusting. Because I think it would be fantastic to measure your brain, say every 3 months, and to see the changes.
Yeah, that would be very interesting. The other thing, there's a connective physiological thing happening though, and that is that I'm doing continuous breathing. If I don't do continuous, do you know what that is? There's no pause between inhaling and exhaling. It's just like you bring your lungs to full, and then you switch to emptying, then you switch to full, and you only exert effort on the inhale, and then the exhale is sort of like a waterfall. But as soon as it comes to the bottom, you fill right back up again. I can't remember what this is for. In any case, I was doing this, and I picked up my book, and this is when I started being able to do this. And now I just have to switch into that kind of breathing, and I can read like that.
Ah. Some sort of it's almost like a meditative state, and the brain might go into, because it might, if you look at Dario's book, the NI chapter might be like little things in here, like when he gives some of the exercises in the NI chapter, you might then be able to say, oh, I do that for this. So there might be some connections that you can find, because as we know, ISFP is of a magical NI mode that they can go into.
That's right. Yeah, it could be that. I don't know what the connection is with the breathing, but if I don't do the breathing, I can't do the reading.
Yeah, because it's part of the exercises for developing NI. He talks about meditation and things like that. Hi, Crystal. My favourite Crystal.
Hi, Ben.
And hi, Jonathan. Oh, that's been terrible so far. I said hi, Imogen, and hi, and I've been totally ignored Jonathan. Oh dear. Now he would probably put that down to my instinct.
Hello, everyone.
So, Imogen, I need to know more about you so that I can listen intelligently. I know that you are thought to be Enneagram 9, and that's what we're discussing today, but do you know your MBTI type?
ISFP.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and then I did a socionics test just recently, and it was ESI, and I know nothing about socionics, but that's what came out.
Interesting, yeah, okay.
I did an in-depth Ben-style analysis. I read it opposite from Imogen. She's 1 second a page, I'm 1 hour a page. Because I'm making notes, and I'm thinking of, so what it means though is I'm memorize it, and I'm comparing it to different things, and of course within that hour there'll be lots of digressions and coming back to it. So terrible for getting distracted. But the reason I bring this up is that I did, now Victor's ESI profile is, it's completely different from ISFP. It mixes up the temperaments a lot between like Guardian and Artisan. But when I looked at the Wikisocion ESI profile, is pretty similar to the MBTI ESFP. It mentions like impulsivity like 6 times, and taking action in the now, and then sometimes regretting it, and them being sort of like battling their impulsive nature. And so I suppose the emphasis is more on the FI in the ESI profile, like them being a bit more, I suppose the socionics version is a bit more self-righteous, a bit more opinionated, because, and I also noticed in the profile that some of the paragraphs was like, an ENTP has written this, because they're like complaining about them being self-righteous, because there is that bias in socionics, the ENTP bias. So so that was, but like I said, so these are, so there's probably going to be lots of different profiles in socionics when it comes to your type that are different from each other, because just because of the difference in how SI and SE is defined. And also, oh yes, I remember now. They see the ISFP as NE polar, so the weakest function is NE. The problem is Victor thinks taking risks is associated with NE. So if you think that, when you come to write the profile for ISFP and ISTP, and if you're thinking deductively, you'll go, oh, they're both NE break. That means they don't like to take risks. But I think, hang on a minute, ISFPs and ISTPs they're artisans. They do like to take risks. They always taking risks. So it's like, I need to interview people of this type to see which model is right. So this has been like a bugbear of mine. This is why I did 3 hangouts with Victor and Dario on SI, because of the differences.
Interesting about the NE risk taking. I definitely am a risk taker, but the way I think it might be a matter of the calculation method, because if I think about, like, my former spouse is NE, he's an ENTP, and definitely, I mean, he was constantly, he still does, just constantly taking risks, but he doesn't calculate them. They're impulsive risks, and I don't take impulsive risks. I will take huge risks, but I will calculate them sometimes very quickly, but I'm definitely considering the potential outcomes.
This is what's brilliant when you're talking to someone of the type who's articulate, you get all of the little nuances that the profiles don't then cover, and then when you can sort of like have that in your own database, and then when you read the profiles in the future, like it reminds you of like the little bits from real people that really flesh out the profiles.
Yeah, my dad and my son are both ISTP, so I'm really familiar with that type as well. And just watching the development of my son, he has always been calculating risk, and he does it quickly because he's really attuned to the environment. So, I mean, it might seem, when he was 18 months old, he used to jump off of 5- and 6-foot platforms into gravel at the park, and he would bury himself up to his thighs, and I'd have to pull him out of the gravel. And so someone looking at that would think, this is a really impulsive baby, but he was not. He would come to he knew the park, and he would triangulate everything. He's never broken a bone. He's done crazy things with his body, but he's never injured himself because he is always very sure of all the risks, and he's accounting for them.
Right, so...
He's not impulsive. My ESFP is, though. He'll just go launching off of something and crack his head.
So it's like, so I mean, a massive dichotomy is like rationality, irrationality. Yeah. And so you can see how it's like that they're like artisans that are rational, but I would say that the rationality of them is completely different from, say, so so like I said there, I would think like the rationality of an ISTP is completely different from the rationality of an INTP, where the ISTP can like do it in a split second, like think, oh, I'll do. Whereas INTP is like, think about it, oh, not do it, too scared. So, so that split second, yeah, that makes sense, because now we can sort of like say yes, because like you get these things, you tend to get this polar thinking, like black and white thinking, like rational types are this, irrational types are this, whereas when you see the nuances, as you've just said there, like ISFP and ISTP, they do the calculation, but it's that little split second, then do the impulsive thing that everyone thinks to do. So they're very interesting.
Yeah,
I was just going to ask a question in comparing yourself to them in the way that they calculate. What do you think is different in the way that they determine when they will take a risk versus when you would?
I think they will take risks because they're curious and they're interested and they want to do it, and it's very, it's almost cold. It doesn't come with anything, like there's no values attached to it. It's just this is what they're going to do. And
they're
then
trying to gather information by experience.
Yeah. Whereas for me, I will consider, well, if I were to do this, how does this align with the things that matter to me? Like I will always check it with that. Whereas they notice afterward, like, oh, that probably wasn't very good for me or for other people.
Yeah.
But for me, I will always check that first. But otherwise, we kind of do a lot of the same stuff.
So have you always been like that, Imogen? I mean, how much do you think maturity comes into it with that, or were you always like that?
No, I was always like that. I was a very responsible child.
Yeah, so that could be more from like the socionic side. So it's like it's getting into these little nuances, like going beyond the stereotypes of the profiles. Really, what someone should do is write massive, long profiles as big as the Riso and Hudson ones to capture all the nuances. Like we want a 40-page profile of the ISFP. Right. So
ISFP profiles are usually really bad. They're just usually terrible, and they miss some really key aspects of our type. It's like the nuance is gone. It's annoying.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, those are the problem types. Crystal might agree. She's looked at some socionics types where, I mean, I'm of the opinion that the intuiting types are pretty much the same, because I've shown Victor like just Linda Bones like just a paragraph on each type, and he was like, oh, that's that, that's that. But the sensing types, as you know, Crystal, the definitions, like you've got SE in the West is acting in the present context, like the essence of the artisan temperament. In socionics, it's about power. Introverted sensing is completely different, and we now have 3 definitions of introverted sensing. We've got Carl Jung's definition, which is like subjective sensing, and like the artist's vision, like what their own subjective opinions and images of how they experience the world. And then we've got comfort sensing in socionics, and then we've got in MBTI we've got this combination of people wanting to see the world through all these standards by the book, and they find that comforting, having these stable traditions and a by-the-book method, and they can have many methods of doing the same thing, and they would switch between them, but they're all like approved methods and respected authorities. And it's almost like just saying SI is this is not enough. It's like you say, I almost feel like saying to people, if you want to know what SI is, read Kurz's chapter on Guardians. It's like that whole thing. If you want to know what SE is, read this whole chapter on Artisans. It's not something that can be boiled down to one little. It's like a whole cluster of attitudes and traits. And because it has, to me, it has such an impact on someone's overall character.
Yeah, I think Ben has a good way of finding direction, of making them all kind of belong to the same whole. And I don't see it the same way. I can see what he's saying, and I see that it sometimes works, but I feel like it's like this. It's like Socionics has stuff here and here, and MBTI has here and here, and they don't cover all the same bases. And so only on the parts that overlap can we say we're talking about the same thing within each type. So I don't feel like it's a perfect marriage, but I enjoy learning about all of them because they offer a different side, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I used to be like a total compatibilist, as you know, but now I've sort of modified my position where it's like where the intuiting types are the same. Like, and I'm basically.
And I don't agree, but that's okay.
Well, I think it's pretty much the same because like if you see the Kersey like NTJs and NTPs, it's obvious which is which. I mean, just look at the Kersey. Please understand me too. Profiles of all the N types, and they match up very well with the Socionics types. It's the ISXX types that are the problem.
Well, and that's why we're here to learn about Imogen's type, right? She can give us a little shading to that. Because I think, I don't know, in just what Ben described about SI versus SE, I think that's something that's a little confusing to me when I'm trying to type another person, especially if they are an Enneagram 9. I think Enneagram 9s are actually harder to type in MBTI and Socionics because they are so good at blending to their environment. Do you relate to that? Do you feel like that's true of you?
It probably was more so before my brain injury than now.
But you don't feel your Enneagram type changed?
I don't think so. Okay. I've never been really sure of it because when I read the profiles for especially the 9, or actually both the 9 and the 1, they're not quite it for me. Like they don't. Like the conflict avoidance is something I don't do. I don't avoid conflict.
Interesting.
I would think initially, before looking at someone's Jungian type, I would want to know their Enneagram first. So you can see where they're coming from, and then look at the Jungian type. So now we can get down to the nitty-gritty of exploring. Because the reason I've come to this opinion is that Jonathan and I did a hangout with Kristen, who's also an ISFP, and we got a lot of information from her, and she's an Enneagram type 6, and so when I did like the Model G hangout, like half an hour later with Kristen, with that Enneagram information in the back of my mind, I was then able to be able to interpret her answers because of that Enneagram knowledge, and then types of it, and as both Crystal and Jonathan know, types vary a lot because of Enneagram. So take it away, Jonathan and Crystal. Over to you for starting this.
Jonathan's turn.
Yep.
Do you have the slide for Enneagram 9, Ben?
Me? Okay. But now, what kind? Do you want the core dynamics?
I want the one that's not the Nicky Holton one. The one that's just all the 9 types and the table.
Oh, okay. Right, quickly I'll get
that's that. That's what I find easiest.
Okay. So right, okay, gotcha. So it's the table that was on.
What do you think your?
Right.
Do you know what your instinctual variants are, Imogen? Your instincts.
I think it was SX.
SX. It was SXSP or SXSO.
Remind me what they are again?
Sexual self-preservation or sexual social. So, if you think of your second instinct as kind of like, your second instinct is the one you find easiest, and you can see it as a sort of a means to an end towards your first one, which is your goal. So, a self-preservation second will try and have their self-preservation needs met first, so they'll try and make sure they're they have food, they have money, they have a home, and so on. They have a base before they pursue their SX desires. Whereas SXSO is more about, they don't care about that as much. They care more about making friends and making connections, and using those to achieve their goals.
Okay, so no, self-preservation is second then, for sure.
Okay, right.
Jonathan, sometimes these Nick Helbig graphics aren't great, so what do you think of these? And sometimes they are okay. Is this useful?
It's not. I'm sorry. It's not bad. I'd say it's not bad. I mean, it's still. I do think they take from Beatrice Chestnut, so it's some of the same stuff. So, sexual need for union with the other, not standing on 2 feet, nobody faded to background, suspicious tenderness. Strange. Unfortunately, 9 is one of the ones I'm not read up enough on. So, I know my dad is a self-preservation 9, in my opinion.
And he is ISTJ, aka in Ben speak SITX.
And I also I think Crystal's husband is in self-preservation 9. And
he's an INTP, folks.
Right.
Self-preservation 9s are more about they're about comfort. They're about for example, they'll try and they may not be concerned with, as long as they have a stable home life, a stable family life, and so on, they'll be happy. They can be quite lazy in a way, but it can be things like, if they enjoy their work, they'll be happy doing their work. If they find their work comforting, they'll be happy to do their work endlessly out of a certain psychological laziness. That sort of thing. It's not necessarily that type 9s avoid conflict, it's more like they'll put up with conflict and not say anything. Unless they feel like someone's crossed the line with them, or if they have to push. They have a lot of inner strength, they just don't like to use it.
That's it. It's very complicated.
Yes.
Because of our mother's an Enneagram 9, ISTJ, SITX, and so it's very hard to separate out which bit's due to the E9, which bit's due to ISTJ. And as Jonathan was describing that, I was thinking, oh, that sounds a little bit ISTJ, so it's hard to disentangle it, isn't it?
I have no qualms with anything he said. Everything he said, I'm like, check, check, check. Very true of my husband.
You'd probably give a better example than Crystal, because you're describing an E9 that's not an ISTJ.
Yeah, because self-preservation first can sometimes look like comfort-seeking or SI, he can appear ISTJ, but I think the difference is that we would drive each other crazy if he were that SI sensing and able to explore the way that I think about things, the way I question stuff, the way I have alternative ideas. He would just think I was weird, or, when I'm trying to share, I have an ISTJ friend, when I try to talk to her about some of my unorthodox ideas about my faith, for example, she just is like, yeah, that's not right. That's not true. That's not good. Like, it's just rejected flat out. And my husband is like, oh, I know, and I've thought about it, but I've also thought, and then he's got like this branch of like all these other things that he's thought about. And so I'm more comfortable accepting that he is just high in comfort level, but he's not one to sit and like nest. He doesn't need things to be clean or organized, or that's not what he needs to be comfortable. It's more like, is it soft? Is the temperature okay? Is it loud or soft? He just needs a space to think and to program.
If Maria was here, she might say something like, that could be a beneficiary shift to ISTJ or something.
Maybe
because
so.
it's like around for a long But shifts tend to be temporary. And then Victor would probably say R subtype. There's always different methods. But yeah.
Or it's just not a perfect system.
Oh yeah, that's what I mean. Human beings will that's what people learn with maturity, that these are systems. Do not confuse the map with the territory.
So type 8, type 9 and type 1 are all part of the instinct triad. So they're very in touch with their instincts and their inner strength, although 9's less so.
Oh,
that doesn't mean it's not there.
Can I ask you something? Can you actually see all of the table, or are the little boxes at the bottom?
I can see it fine. I can see.
In the way of the night?
I can see everything.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, the instinct, the body triad. So 8, 9, and 1. They're all about. They're all about power. They're all about control, and they're all about not being controlled in particular. So they're relying on their inner strength to ward off the environment, and if necessary to impose themselves in the environment. They all have a relationship with anger. Type 8s exaggerate their anger, so if they're stressed they might explode with anger reflexively without even thinking, and then forget about it. Type 8s tend to repress their anger, so when they're stressed they might burst out in anger again, but it won't be as aggressive. More like just a burst of anger that's been building up over time. And type 1s are at odds with their anger, so when they feel angry, they intercept the anger and question it and say, is this right? Am I justified? Is it right to feel angry, or is it wrong to feel angry? And so on. So type 9s are kind of like the Incredible Hulk. I think the Incredible Hulk is a type 9. So it's like, mild-mannered Bruce Banner scientist on the outside, inside ranging beasts when pushed too far.
I don't think there's anything scarier than a type 9 angry. Because it's like so against their usual calm, you know? So it's like, whoa, the earth has shifted to make this occur.
Ooh. Nervous laugh on Imogen. What's going on there, Imogen? Some anger going on in your life?
No, this is totally true. I am 99% of the time very zen, and then something will be happening and I'll address it. This is what I mean. I don't avoid conflict. If I see that there is a conflict, I want to know what it is and I want to fix it right now or as quickly as possible. So, but if I don't know how to fix it, I'll observe it for a while. But then if this thing keeps happening and I've been addressing it and it's still happening and I'm addressing it and it's been a long period of time, it builds up for me, and then I just kind of turn into Rambet and I just it's kind of ugly for like 3 minutes. It's ugly for 3 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's true for gammas, like because ESI is in the gamma quadra. I feel like that's true. Gammas they don't let things fester. Like they want to just move. It's an inconvenience. It's like this is clogging the system. You know, like let's clean this out. Yeah, that's interesting.
I would also say that 9-wing 1s are a bit more laid back or a bit more optimistic than 9-wing 8s, who are more in touch with their anger, and obviously things like tri-type will matter as well, and other things. The thing with type 9s is they tend to feel like they've got this unspoken contract with the rest of the world, especially with their immediate relations and whoever, where I will go along with you, I'll go along with your agenda or whatever, and in return I will be allowed my space and my peace, my freedom to do things. And unfortunately, because it's unspoken, sometimes a lot of people don't actually know this or expect it, and they can feel like people are taking advantage of them at the time, or they're being imposed on too much. Which again is one of those things that might just build up and build up. They'll put up with it until whatever. So yeah, that's more or less it.
That's a very good description of me. Yeah.
I want to know what you think about under the virtue column. It says their virtue is action. Do you relate to that?
Yes,
Yeah.
because that's because they're their vice, their passion is sloth or disengagement. So sloth is not just laziness; it can be physical laziness, but it can also be psychological laziness, or moral laziness even. So moral laziness would be you know right from wrong and you choose wrong because it's easier, or you don't know right from wrong and you're not bothered to try and find out because again it's easier, it's too hard. Psychological laziness is more like, as I said, that could involve you're a very hard worker but you find work easy or comforting. You're not actually doing things that really challenge you or really inconvenience you. That's what happens when the Type 9 starts to disintegrate. The extreme of this would probably be a just following orders type of soldier, or someone who goes along with something really, really bad, but that's an extreme thing. So the what was it you were saying? Virtue, action. So that's why the virtue is action, because that's instead of being lazy, they're assertive, they're involved, they're doing things to overcome that sloth.
If there's something you mentioned something. So, for instance, we could say that because Dario talks about extroverted sensing being taking tangible action in the now, and then Jonathan, and then you could then also usually we've got like the ISTJ, so the SITX type Enneagram 9, where they're taking action because it's routine, and I think that could be. I think that ISTJs, SITX can have a tendency towards externally compensating for inner instability and inner dynamic nature, and it's almost like, and I think I've asked Jonathan before, that OCD is usually an outer compensation for an inner dynamic state.
Which I would guess Imogen wouldn't relate to because she doesn't have like...
Exactly, because the opposite, and which would be the opposite in that I personally think that my theory of artisans would be, and Socion it says they're static types, and that their behaviour is I see that as compensation. So if you see the behaviour of artisans, you would say, so a person here in socionics saying that artisans are static would laugh their heads off and say, hang on a minute, have you seen the way they act? But then, but then I learned something from the guy that does Personality Junkie when he talks about judging and perceiving being different depending on whether you're talking about the inside or the outside. And so I can see how artisans are static on the inside because they're calm, they're collected, and which can be boring, and so maybe they want to act to like compensate for that. And there's also the thing of they're calm acting in the now. It's the zone. It's that state. And Jeff has talked about that is the most fun thing for him. It's just acting in the now, not thinking about anything else, but just acting purely in the moment. And he would love to stay in that forever, in that particular zone. Do you ever get like that, Imogen, where you would like to stay in a sort of a zone? Maybe when you were drawing, stay in a zone, a sort of mental state or anything. I don't know. I'm not an SP.
Well, it's almost as if that, because there's no resistance in that state, like there's just no resistance, it's pure flow. It's a nice place to be, but I definitely don't like to seek that out and spend long periods of time in that state. I feel like there's other work to do.
Real life.
So, because it's so easy for me. I like to challenge myself. I'm just thinking when I used to blow glass, and I mean flow state is essential to that, because otherwise you'll cook yourself literally. So you have to be completely in the moment and never diverge. You can't be distracted. I was distracted once, and I cooked my hand. Like one time I thought a different thought while I was blowing glass, and that's what happened.
Right, I won't take that up.
I won't ever go. Yeah, me either. I wish I could, but I would be a burnt mess.
NPs should go nowhere near it. NPs are the worst group of people to participate in.
But then it was so. This is the thing. I chose visual arts because I didn't want to take the risk to do music, which is less easy in a way. Music, and part of it too is that if I thought that if I failed at music I would die, whereas if I failed with visual arts, well, that's okay, I can live with that. But
that could be more E9 laziness. Just saying.
What could that be?
That could be more E9 laziness. Not taking taking it easy.
That was when I was young. You know, when I was making those decisions. But now I definitely go full on for challenge, and I have to, because just in the last 16 months I've had to relearn every skill I have, which is still a fraction of what I used to have since I was hit by a truck. So I've had to learn how to talk and walk and everything.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. So every day is always challenging.
Even like the last hangout we did, I thought you were very articulate.
Oh no.
Even the previous one we did months ago. I think you said you found it draining afterwards, though.
Oh, I felt completely stunned. The switching of the screens, and at the time I still really needed to see people speaking in order to understand what they were saying. So I kept missing. It was actually very difficult.
It might have been tricky when I did my opening. I did explain it before when I did like the joke with like the big N.
I saw the N.
You would see it. As other people, it's like Jeff saw two shark fins.
I didn't see it at all.
Yeah, I had to do the diagram. I showed Jonathan the diagram.
I wanted her to finish her thought. What did you say?
Sorry.
I wanted to say something about. We were talking about ISFP and ISTP earlier, and another thing that is different for me, and this is, I don't know my son's Enneagram type, but he's bratty. He will deliberately bug people in the particular ways he knows are really going to get to them, and find it really amusing. And he knows exactly how far he can go before they, burst into a rage. So he'll stop just short of that. Whereas I will never do that. I will have an internal dialogue where I am being bratty, but I won't say it. I wouldn't actually subject other people to it. I'll just be amused completely by myself, and nobody will know why I'm laughing.
Do you like to tease? Do you tease though? Are you a tease?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just checking, because I think my daughter is an ISFP, and my brother who passed away, I'm pretty sure was an ISTP, and he very much sounds like your son. He loved pushing buttons, and he was bratty all the time, but he seemed to always get away with it. So.
Yeah, because they're
in that case,
they are.
These ISTPs are probably type 6, either type 8s or sexual 6s.
Yeah, he was an SX6.
Yeah, probably that.
Oh, and about the SX part, so in my life, I can see very much how I am always gearing toward having a primary relationship, and I need things to be stable so that I can move in my own way through them. So I do want my environment to be very stable. I would prefer if there was enormous amounts of structure around me, so that I could just do whatever I'm going to do. I can deal with there not being structure, but it's almost like the way that I surf through my life is to try and make everything stay so that I have peace. Which makes no sense. It's completely contradictory, and I live with that all the time.
I was just about to say something about and this is Ben talking about functions and being so sometimes I'm a little bit because you know me, I've got mixed feelings about functions. So for instance, socionics will say the ability to detect power and stuff, but isn't it just a case, Crystal, that say with SPs is they are observant to how angry they are making the person and therefore know how far. It's not a magic of the function, it's just being observant of the effect that someone has on someone.
Not my brother. He was clueless.
Ah. So how do you think he knew how far to push someone?
I feel like it was more a sense of the dynamics of how much more dominant he knew he was than the other person versus when they would push back. It was like a competition of wills, and he could sense like they're going along, I have the upper hand, and then he could see when he was no longer going to have the upper hand, and then it wasn't fun anymore.
Yeah.
Because in Please Understand Me Too, Kersey wrote about ESTP being the best at reading body language. I was just wondering if it's not a magical function thing, it's just that they're used to pushing people's buttons and very observant of how people are reacting and the body language and things like that. And they know when they've got someone rattled, they can see it. It's not a magical thing, it's something they can see.
Well, that still sounds like SE though. So
Pardon?
that sounds like SE though, so it is a magical function.
Well, yeah, to you, yes. Because
SEFE.
Because if we go by the way Dario sees the function, when somebody is in an SE mode, they're totally immersed in everything that is like of the senses, and so you could see.
It could also be extroverted feeling or tertiary extroverted feeling.
Yeah, I mean it's not. I mean in reality we know everything is moving together and it's all part of the same system, and that it's not these separate elements, and that these separate elements are just a convenient model to help break down this huge complex thing we call human nature.
Right. I think that's what made me enjoy socionics, because it did a good job of talking about things working in tandem, and that seemed more to a clearer picture from the experiences I've had in observing others and in myself. And I think it's difficult to say because I either have typed ESTPs wrong, or the ESTPs I know just don't have the superpower you're talking about. But that wasn't my experience with the ESTPs, that they were really good at reading people's body language. I mean, I think they're better at like knowing their own body and knowing their own capacities, and I felt like they were the kind that would just bulldoze over people in a basketball game or something, because they were so in the moment. And I feel like it takes more observational skills than is natural to them sometimes. It doesn't mean that they can't in like one-to-one settings or something, but I don't know.
I remember Jeff saying something about his son Morgan, that he would observe all these things, he would observe all the facial expressions, but he wouldn't know why someone's facial expression would then change, because then that would involve FI in imagining the person behind.
Who's this?
Morgan, Jeff's ESTP son.
Oh, interesting.
Like he wouldn't.
And I could think that that's probably more accurate. I think maybe that's why her son slowed down or something.
Yeah, because
he's like, I don't know why, but I could tell something was going to change.
And that makes sense that you could see like the ESTP like be able to size someone up, but then of course they'd be completely oblivious as to why they've just upset someone.
Okay, so maybe I misunderstood you, because when you say they're really good at observing, to me that means that they understand, like they know what they're feeling. That's the piece that I'm like, not always.
Yeah, it's just the physical things of, just like your actual, like nothing to do with anyone's, just like the physical signs of, because it's like, I suppose it's that they're not able to because I've talked to like Jeff and Morgan a lot, they see that as too much reading in to someone. And Morgan would talk about, but that's not actually there, that's just guesswork. You can only go on what you actually see. And so it's like your actual obvious facial expressions and body language and things like that, because they're not able to imaginatively put themselves behind that. Now, of course, and they think that when intuiting types do that to them, they're reading things into their motivations that are not there. But I would say that probably depends on the NF, how experienced and mature they are. The older they are, the better they are going to be at reading people. What say you, Crystal? You're an NF.
I don't have a problem with that. I would say that that's very plausible. And it does depend, and it depends on the relationship and how long you've known them. I mean, sure, you can still get a reading on someone really early on, but I don't think that we're infallible.
I remember that. We did that 3-hour-long video in which the spider died. You did mention that about your intuition, that the longer you know someone, the better it gets.
I was a traitor to all INFJs. Jonathan disowned me after that, didn't you?
I'm angry in here. More than
that was my polar function. I was scared. That's why he died.
Crystal was powerless. She couldn't stop him. You were in another country.
I suppose I'm sensitive to extroverted sensing because I'm scared of it. That's why I noticed.
What do you think, Imogen? Are you guys worth being scared of? Like, help us understand.
No, not at all. But actually, I can see that happening sometimes. Because I'm not necessarily... See, this is the thing. I'm very good at seeing behavior, and I can track behavior over a long period of time. I have 5 children, and I have homeschooled them. My eldest is 13, and I've homeschooled them all. And I've done it by... I have just like an internal system for recognizing through their behavior exactly where they're at in every subject area and where their strengths and weaknesses are, and then I'm able to just sort of smoothly include what they need to work on in their work. But on the other hand, I can't read people's motivations. So I am continuously asking, why did he do that? Or why is she doing that? I don't understand why they're doing this. And that is my constant question. Why is someone doing that? I never know. I just see their behavior. And I'm starting to remember to question more, because sometimes I will act according to someone else's behavior, and I didn't remember to consider why they did it. Like, I didn't ask. I just went and acted. And
yeah, that's a sensing versus intuiting thing.
Can you?
Oh, you want to pick back up?
Do you find it easier to understand the behavior of someone you relate to, or if you relate to them, or is it all the time?
Well, when I'm saying I understand the behavior, I don't understand its motivations. I see its pattern.
So you don't have. So none of your children have patterns that you relate to personally, then?
I have an ISFP daughter, and very oddly, I find her very perplexing a lot of the time because she sulks. And I don't. I am not a sulker. If there's a problem, I just fix it.
I suppose the positive side of that is that you could have an N type, or because like somebody could misattribute a motivation to somebody and say, oh, they're doing it because of this, and then suddenly they close their mind off and then won't accept news information because they've made that judgment about someone. So I suppose the benefit, Imogen, from your point of view, is that you then remain open to new information.
Yeah, I feel like
actions.
I feel like I'm continuously like a little child in that way. I'm just always wondering, like I'm just completely naive and just watching, like I don't understand why this is happening. Why are you behaving this way? And I have to just keep asking. So I guess, yeah, I just remain continuously curious and open to what people tell me about why they're behaving the way they are. But that can be really bad because I don't... I'm not very good at keeping track of that. So people can do the same horrible thing to me over and over and over again. It takes me a long time to finally realize, oh, this is how it's going to be now.
what you could do is, and something that Victor Goenko's done, is that there are all these books out there done by Paul Ekman, where he like really looks closely at facial expressions in like super duper depth, more than anyone ever, because he's like done it for about 50 years. So maybe that might help you. Is looking, because as a visual thing, you would be able to see these like little tiny differences.
Oh, I do. Oh, but you're saying that he's mapped like.
Oh, yeah, I mean, like all that, like I mean, like just like telling the difference between a real smile and a fake smile, not just from like Duchenne's smile and like around the eyes, like how tight the jaw is, like loads of little details, and someone with your visual would be able, and I think you would be able to like master that to get that better, because you find the other thing harder, the reading in of motivation. But
that I do. I see micro expressions of someone's whole body.
Oh yeah,
I can see all of that.
I do that as well. It's like when Victor talked about Laura Morris's micro expressions, and that showed these huge, and I said they're not so micro. These huge facial expressions. It's not obvious what she's thinking.
No. So this is interesting because I'm curious about your description when you talk about not understand, or like that people can get away with doing things over and over and it takes you a really long time. That can be explained from an Enneagram 9 standpoint, but it can't be explained from like a gamma quadra. Like that's anti-gamma.
Well,
so
it could be more. It might be because none of the ones in the gamma, except perhaps the ENTJ, really pays attention to, that sort of stuff in the first place. I think INTJs can be really fooled by that. So they'll always try and impose they won't understand why people are acting this way or so on. They'll notice the consistency, but they won't understand the reasoning, their own reasons for it, probably.
Could it be that because the ISFP themselves is impulsive and does things that they themselves don't know why? You might think, well, if I don't know why I do things impulsively because I feel like it, then when you're looking at somebody else, it's like, well, whereas other types that know exactly why they do certain things, and maybe it's easier for them to like try to read motivations, like say an INFP who knows how they feel about everything and can like abstract it. I mean, I suppose INFP is like the #1 type to think they know why people do certain things.
Yeah, but they're not always right.
That's the thing. That is the problem with being an intuitive. It's like I said, they can ascribe a motivation, then close their mind. And Dario said that at first the INFP is like the most open types until they make a decision. Then they're completely closed-minded and new information won't come in.
Right. I basically never close my mind because if the circumstance changes or whenever there's even the tiniest new piece of information, the whole thing changes for me. I don't necessarily carry it over from one circumstance to another.
Right. So the biggest divide is S versus N, the most important dichotomy.
Well, I feel like that's still confusing me because I think keeping your mind open and not making your mind up about something is something that in the typology community is used as a description of intuiting. It doesn't mean that that's true because all types have the capacity to, close their mind off or not.
Well, I was just thinking specifically for the example of
knowing
INFP.
people's motivations. Oh.
Just that, but of course, even looking at the Kersey profile of INFJ, they're much more open because they know. You could say static dynamic. They know they're changeable on the inside. They probably know other people are changeable.
Whereas INFPs, they can be changeable, but they don't want to be. They want to make decisions. That's why it's suggesting they want to make decisions and things, and so they'll assume that if someone is acting in a certain way or consistently, that's how they are. There's no point in reasoning with them and so on. And they might even think it's respecting the other person in that they're respecting their ability to, be true to themselves, especially true to themselves, even if they don't like their behaviour that they're seeing, they'll still think, well, it would be extra rude of me to try and change them, depending. That could also be their inferior extroverted thinking.
So how do you contrast that to an ISFP? Because they're both FI leads.
Yeah, but I think it's the extroverted sensing versus the extroverted intuiting thing. They're more about ISFPs are more about in the moment things, and the SE's more. SE's not really about ideas or anything, so they're not really bothered with that.
I think I've been hanging around with socionics people too long, because I think that's why I started diverging between thinking these were very compatible between the two systems, because the ESI is not described that way at all. Like they're described as like kind of pissy people.
Yes. Like I said, that's a problem type.
And that's not what we're seeing with Imogen, and so I'm
exactly.
Like, well,
Imogen's a sweetheart.
Yeah, so I mean, this is where I think CUIR is better for the sensing types, and we'll try and investigate. And I think that Victor's ISXX profiles are outliers because it's deductive thinking from functions, whereas Kersey looked at motivations of actual. He looked at the motivate, and
I just don't think they're the same.
Yeah, I agree. They're not. I don't think the socionics ones though are wrong unless they actually meet people like that.
And I know a lot of them, and that fits them perfectly, and they own it with pride. And it's like, yay, the system defined so much about me. So
well, as long as it fits them, then fine.
Yeah. But like the MBTI ISFP is like the free spirit, the artist, and they make it really fluffy, and I'm sure that's the part that you're saying is missing the nuances of the actual person, because they make them sound just so sweet and cuddly, and they can be very intelligent and sometimes opinionated, and that's not really described very well.
I think some of this is, you have to remember that in socionics there's Model A, Model G, and all these other things, so it's not just
and Victor has said that the schools are not compatible with each other. Yeah, so socionics isn't even compatible with itself.
Yeah. Also, I would say that type of ISFP sounds a bit more like a sexual 6. That could be more of a. It could be that. Also.
What's your tri-type? Do we know your tri-type?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Crystal, a good thinking of the ISFP. We've done Kristen. She says that she will like. She's a little bit in between because I did a Model G video with her. So I think that'd be a good video to get your opinion on, because we've got one with her Enneagram and then one on the FI in Model G, and she says she does like to prod people, like to get their reactions. So it's like it depends what ISFP profile you're reading. So it's like it's like the Western one is like the badass, but they do have a little bit of an attitude as well. They do have a strong FI, but with a bad. Oh, she's smiling now, Imogen. Badass with strong FI, strong principles, strong feelings.
Is she related to the socionics version, not the MBTI, or she related to both?
Oh no, it was because we just did the FI section. In it.
I'll look at it
because I want to do it in super depth, and that's why it was so helpful to know the Enneagram, to do the Enneagram video like half an hour before. And again, it's so nuanced. It's really good talking to real people of that type. Then it's not just.
I think about pushing people, she was relating more to the SXSO description specifically. I think that's when she said that she liked pushing people and finding out where they stood and stuff. That and sexual 6. Also, I should remember Jack Aaron left a comment in that video, and he seemed to laugh at the idea that ISFP could be an Enneagram 9, and I guess this explains it now. That's why he thought that was strange. It's totally different.
Right, I know. Well, and I think that's why I was curious to join this chat, because I wanted to understand that too.
Yes, but in Myers-Briggs, Enneagram 9 is very common for ISFPs. I don't know.
Well, if I have an INFP son, he's my 13-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that I think that I'm not the kind of person who avoids conflict is because, well, one, I used to be married to an ENTP, who is all, that's just basically how he functions, is through and combat. So between my former spouse and then my eldest son, who's an INFP, and he definitely avoids conflict. He will just stand up and leave. He won't discuss. He will physically, in every way, avoid it.
Yeah.
He will even plug his ears. I mean, he's 13. He's very mature, but he will just very quietly he just will refuse to even engage. Whereas for me, if I see something that needs to be changed or some kind of a conflict, I'm right in there. I'm ready to go. Not in a negative way. I want it to work out for everyone. But
that's quite Enneagram things. They're very much about harmonizing things, and they're more about, not so much about avoiding conflict. They might put up with conflict. That's more of a thing, putting up with it and then snapping eventually if they can.
So we're talking a lot about conflict and whether you engage or don't engage. And my understanding of nines is that sometimes they can, and this is probably another example of why an ISFP 9 is a little confusing, because nines can sometimes be disconnected from their internal state because it's so much about, and maybe this is just what's her name? Beatrice Chestnut's book. Maybe this is just her opinion, but she talks about nines being more concerned about their external surroundings and wanting that environment to be peaceful, and that sometimes they will shut down how they feel in order to have the peace. And that sounded more FE to me. And I've always typed, like, INFPs are often typed as 9. Oh my gosh, why is my camera so weird? Sorry. I think my
camera's fine.
Sound is off.
Yeah, blame me. I've just shared this on the screen. So I finally mastered, in quotation marks, the core dynamics. So they actually have it. The basic fear is like the most important thing, and that actually creates the desire.
I would, for Crystal, I would say, don't you can hear me anymore.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Your camera was fine. Your camera was fine, by the way. I never saw it. Anyway, that description you were talking about, I think that's more of a 9-wing-8 thing than a 9-wing-1 thing. So it might just be that Imogen's a 9-wing-1. 9-wing-8s are more. They're more, when they're less healthy, they're more about shutting down, shutting things out. 9-wing-1s, less. They might do that, but it's less so.
Well, I was just reading, like she said, type 9s are the prototype for the tendency in all of us to tune out our own inner knowing as a way of going with the flow and not rocking the boat. And that sounds anti-FI, because FI is all about their inner knowing. It's just confusing.
Yeah.
Well, I see FI as staying true to yourself, but if your self matures, then you're staying true to it. It just means highly individualistic to me. It doesn't necessarily mean.
Yeah,
but that's what nines are. That's not what they're doing, though. They're keeping peace at the expense of themselves.
An FI 9 would value, one of their values would be keeping peace.
Yeah.
And keeping peace in the environment, so they might reconcile the two.
And that makes sense for an INFP. But if Imogen is saying that she doesn't allow things to build up just to keep the peace, I would love to hear more from her mouth, like what she thinks she really resonates with about type 9.
Oh. Well, I don't know the type very well because the things that I've read have all been sort of disappointing.
Well, what I'll do is
really?
we could go through this, like the motivations and one thing he said there. If we use like sociology's definition of FI and say like ethics of relations, then like the peacemaker wants good relations, I suppose. Right, so if we look at this, so if we look at the core fear, so Jonathan, could you explain that to, or either of you, Jonathan, Crystal, might be better, to like the basic fear of the E9?
Well, the first thing I want to say is type 9, type 3, 6, and 9 are the ones with the most trouble pinning down their own type. And one way or another, Hannah's went back and forth on a whole bunch of things.
Oh yes.
So it's not surprising that they don't always resonate or relate to any particular type. So that's part of what's going on here. And also, you have to remember that although they're the peacemaker, although they like harmony and so on, they are also potentially one of the most strong-willed types. And if they think they can, it might be more that they'll shut down conflict immediately but not deal with the problems that cause this conflict. So they're dealing with the surface conflict but not the deeper stuff.
I'll just tell the audience that A terms means attitudes and B terms means behaviours.
See, I didn't know that, I forgot that, so thank you.
And well, that's in the big explanation, the fantastic explanation of core dynamics. And I think it's also that the A terms also recognize. The idea is the basic fear causes the basic desire, and then the basic desire leads to a self-image. But then, because the self-image does not represent the whole person, and people know how they slightly differ from their self-image, that then creates another fear, which then creates a secondary desire, and it sort of like cascades down, and then it's hard to move up.
So you should read it right to left, like Japanese.
Yeah, I mean, it goes. You see, I've got the graphic. I think I've got the graphic where I marked it up more for the E4. No, I've not got that one. I can show that. It would take too long to explain, but if we try and go back to, I've got Jackie Boy on screen. Oh, weird graphics. That's that people know what it.
That should be the thumbnail, just scare people.
Oh!
It's a blurry image.
Right, but so if we could concentrate, so lost. There we go. Because that's Imogen about that. So is that very important to you, Imogen? Like, being together with people, like this harmony. Like,
or fear of loss and separation, or impermanence. That's very. I don't know. It's so gut related to me. It's just interesting. The instinct. It's not. I mean, as a 2, I could interpret that in a heart way, loss of separation from others, but then it puts in parentheses impermanence, and that's not talking about connection to others. It's more about like this sense of stability or a sense of like peace. It's just peace.
Jonathan, have you got Understanding the Enneagram on PDF? Because I think they have like a section on the core fear. And I can tell you what page it is, because I've got, right, here we go. It's going to be in chapter.
Does it talk about that in the book somewhere more about what it means by fear of impermanence?
Understanding the Enneagram, no, I do not. I've got Discovering your personality type.
I can read a little bit out from it. Right. I've got that's the type 4. Got to go to type 9. Right, that's
I relate to that though. I don't have a fear of impermanence, but I definitely seek stability, and that's probably one of my main fears is just the instability of life. Like I've probably been seeking that my whole life, just so like a base level stability.
Do you relate to the 1 a lot as well? Is that?
I don't know, but that whole 9 description seemed very much like me.
Yeah.
I know, but the one I
it can also just be that you're a healthy type 9, so maybe that's what's the stuff that's bugging Crystal is more about average or less healthy 9s.
Mm-hmm.
Less healthy 9s like conflicts and so on, but healthy 9s are more willing to step in, more assertive.
Mm-hmm.
You certainly seem like a very healthy person.
Oh,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So this is...
I think the attitude, the A terms, self-possessed, present, self-aware, awake, alert, serene, exuberant, like you do have a very present and alert and serene presence. So I think that's interesting. Unself-conscious, I think that's something that I love about ISFPs in general. I think they're naturally unself-conscious, like when they are healthy. You know, we can all kind of go to the dark side, but usually when they're healthy, they're just themselves. You know, they don't have to put on any show.
I honestly don't even know how I would.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the middle of a litigation process, and it's very interesting because there are all these different things that happen that are just inauthentic in that process, and so I feel very naive. Like I feel like that, that like Rapunzel, like coming out of the tower and just looking around and being amazed, because I can't keep up with it. I don't have it in me at all. So I'm just there, and I go where I'm supposed to, and I answer the questions I'm asked, and I have no idea where it's going or why they're asking them. So it'll be interesting to see how this turns out, because I don't even, I can't even guess.
Imogen, can I tell the audience what the litigation thing is about? Because I think I know what it's about.
Yeah, it's just for the accident.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I think that I hope you trust your lawyer, because it sounds like he's driving this train.
Yeah, she is, and she's really. I told her this. I said, like I don't know why people are asking me the questions they are, or what they're trying to get at. I can sometimes tell that the question is loaded, but I don't know what with. And she said, well, that's actually perfect. You just show up and you just answer questions honestly. So she just encouraged me.
Is it jury? There's a jury?
No.
Oh.
It's
all on the judge.
Yeah.
Do you remember we were talking before about not being able to ascribe motivations? That might be the way it is in the model, that ISFP and ISTP are anypolar. And when you talk to ENFPs, they're actually quite good at reading people's motivations, aren't they?
Well, they have a bazillion potential reasons. You know? And then something in them will determine it's probably this. But
they also have strong FEs, so there's stronger FE than INFPs, but so there's that. They can read into things like everyone else. So.
Oh yeah, and it depends how. And Morgan, being ESTP, will talk about a certain ENFP in his life that does this kind of reading, and it drives him crazy, because it's like, how can you read into me what I'm thinking and all this? Whereas he's the total opposite, where it's like he can only see body language, and part of that is going to be his age. But so yeah, that SN divide of like, it is what it is. I go off what I see. How can you read into stuff?
But isn't it beautiful too, because it makes it less complicated by all these potential and possibly wrong things. It just cleans the slate, and it's like things are what they are, and only when you know what they are will you know. I think it's refreshing. Yeah, and that's probably why your lawyer said what she said, saying that it's perfect, because then there's no duplicity to you, you know, and that's a good thing, especially in a court of law.
Well, the lawyers probably try to make sure the court or the the litigation will be trying to make sure that you're not in any way responsible for the accident. Like, you didn't walk out of it on purpose, or you weren't drunk or anything like that. Yeah, that's the sort of thing they're. Sorry.
That part is all done. It's already been determined that I know I wasn't to blame in any way, and
that's good.
This is just going to be about how it's affected my life.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
That's the last part.
How damaged you were. How you were about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
that's interesting about the NE guessing, because it's something that that's the kind of conflict that me and my INFP son have. Something happens amongst us in our dynamic, and then he will immediately start talking about people's motivations, and they always do this, and so they're just doing it to get this. And I rush into the room and say, hey, hang on a second. This circumstance has changed. There's new information here. And then he will take a second and say, oh, okay. And then he'll look at the new information together. So we're actually a really good team. But sometimes it's very upsetting because he will go straight to a motivation that is really wrong, like about one of his siblings, and that that will hurt them. I have an INFJ son too, and he is the one who's most hurt by that, because he, like, not being seen for who he is just really devastating to him.
Jeff says something similar. I'll let you get in a moment, Jonathan. I'll just say a little bit. Jeff says something similar. That he says a lot of this, where people ascribe someone's motivation, he will say, but they've just acted like that because it's situational. That the particular reaction in that circumstance.
With INFPs, I think all of it is they're going by how this situation makes them feel, or how they would feel in that situation, and they're confusing that with the truth, with the facts. This is how it makes you feel, therefore this is what you meant to do to me, that sort of thing, or this is what you meant to do to this other person. They're also, because they're using FI first, they might consider, okay, here's all the possible reasons I would have acted like they acted, and so they're coming up with, so they can't relate to reasons, or they're not relating to reasons that they're not thinking of. That's how it is. I understand what you mean. I do have experience with INFPs. So.
Yeah, he's building a catalog though, so it's working because he's starting to see that there are lots of different possibilities, and so he's not always wrong. Lots of times he really helps me to see what is motivating someone. Like, oh, I'm glad to know that. He helps.
I think he should learn Enneagram, because that'll give him, really boost him up if you can't tell. If you get him into Enneagram.
It would help you understand why that's what happens first, that rather than wait and gather more information, that there's just such this flood of offense.
It also temperament as well. Once you know someone's Kersey temperament, it gives you a group, like if you go in Kersey temperament first, and then, because it's easier to see that than Enneagram, and because usually each temperament has a cluster of traits that come along with it. So it's like, oh, if you know someone's an artisan, then they probably value all of these things, or if someone's an NF, they value these things, and then you could maybe further break it down by Enneagram, because it's like, oh, you see this in someone, and usually these other traits cluster around that thing that go along with it. Because usually people aren't a mix. Because usually, you're not usually going to get someone who's a mixture of guardian and artisan traits. Now, there might be of those behaviors because of their individual situation, but their motivations will cluster, and it'll give you a way of making sense of it.
Yeah, like I would say that my behaviors are definitely situational, but that my values are always undergirding, like always. These don't. They only shift as I'm tweaking them through my life and gaining more experience. But they don't predict my behavior, except where it's only the value that's at stake.
Right.
like I'm really consistent.
I love that about FI types. You guys are awesome that way. Because I know I'm very inconsistent. So you're a good example.
So, Imogen here, where you got here, to have inner stability and like losing their peace of mind, and now that could actually help you with your recovery, because you were saying that, you know, did you mention it off air? I think you may not have mentioned it on air, about you're saying that you can control your breathing in a certain way and it helps you to do something.
Yeah.
Did you mention that on air? I can't remember.
I don't know. I think I did. I think it was right at the very beginning when I was saying that I started doing continuous breathing as an exercise, and I picked up a book while I was doing that, and I was able to read the page in a couple of seconds because I was able to read without verbalizing in my head, and I was also able to recollect information.
That's fascinating. That's very cool.
Yeah. I have lots of very strange brain quirks now. I so many of them. Yeah, it's injury related.
So if you ever get back to where you were before, you'll have all these extra activities as well, all these extra features.
Yeah, I've lost so much, though. I don't know. We'll have to see.
How many months has it been? Because it sounds like you've gone through so much and gained back so much already, with a lot of work, obviously.
Yeah, it's 16 months post accident.
I don't want to alert anyone or alarm anyone, but Crystal's thumbnail froze for a few minutes ago.
Oh no.
Oh really?
It's fine for me.
Yeah, it was fine. It's fine for me now, and it's just that in the position it froze, it looked like your breast went giant and your.
Oh my gosh! I'm glad it wasn't on the main.
Well, Jonathan, maybe you are next time. No, I don't know.
I'm sorry.
Maybe I'll use that as the thumbnail.
Yeah, it's in this video somewhere now.
Great. That's wonderful. Oh gee.
Not that I want to draw attention to it.
Yeah, not at all. You really didn't want to, I can tell, because you brought it up.
I'm just, but you know, if it gets us views.
Oh my god.
I remember with Krista, I went through there was one thumbnail where it was like a flamenco, and she said no, but she did let me use the banana one as a thumbnail.
Oh, you guys are terrible.
Oh, I know.
I know. Evil.
Tell me oh, sorry.
I was asking, you started saying something, but I couldn't hear you.
Oh, so I was wondering about the wing, the one wing. How, I don't know it well.
Let me try and I can get it up. In fact,
yeah, because you're healthy, Imogen, that diagram is not much useful. That core dynamics is not much useful.
So what does the wing represent? What is it there?
Well, it's to do with subtypes, so why there's differences. So it's a simple way of putting it without going into tri-type or instinct and so on. So the idea is that if you're a 9 wing 8, you're a 9 but you borrow traits from type 8. And if you're a 9 wing 1, you're a 9 but you borrow traits from type 9. So there's this. It's one way of explaining the differences between different people of the same type. So I can share it with you now. In fact, I've got it up.
And in fact, it can be the wing. I think Reeser and Hudson call it like heavy, moderate, and light wings, where it can be like so strong that people are hard to tell their main type from their wing. Jonathan thinks I might be a 5 wing 4, whereas I think I'm a 4 wing 5. So the wing can be quite strong.
So can you see this?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to read it out because this is a habit I'm trying to break.
Oh yes, it's
Someone
also.
else can read it out if they want.
Who's got the nicest voice here?
That's not the way to start.
Who wants to? So Imogen or Crystal? Who wants to read it out?
Is it easier for you to listen and determine if it's true of you, or to read it yourself, Imogen?
Well, come on, she's recovering from a brain injury. Come on, Crystal, let's give us some. Okay, I'll read it out, or Crystal will.
Okay.
So, Crystal, do you want to read it, or do you want me to read it?
That's fine. The 9 with an 8 wing, the comfort seeker. The traits of the 9 and those of the 8 conflict with each other. 9s are passive and desire harmony with others, while 8s are aggressive, asserting themselves and following their self-interest. Since 9 is the basic personality type, people of this subtype tend to be fundamentally oriented to others, receptive, unself-conscious, agreeable, and so forth. While some part of them asserts itself strongly, at least at times, there is a mellow, outgoing quality about them. They are sociable, like to tell jokes and stories, and spend time with their friends. 9s with an 8 wing are more sensual and instinctive than the 9s with a 1 wing, and tend to operate more on feelings and hunches. They tend to embody more the easygoing demeanor associated with 9s, but also give the impression of being more physical, more grounded. This is one of the most difficult subtypes to understand because, and that's as far as I can see.
Because the component types. I changed the page. Do you still see this?
There you go. Because the component types are in such diametrical opposition to each other.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah. I think you can ignore the noteworthy examples because they're. I agree with some.
Some of them, some are not. Okay. In healthy persons of this subtype, the 8 wing adds an element of inner strength and willpower, as well as an expansive, passionate quality to the overall style of the personality. Healthy 9s with an 8 wing combine the comforting, positive qualities of the 9 with the endurance and strength of the 8, resulting in a subtype at once powerful and gentle. Despite their unself-consciousness, healthy people of this subtype are able to assert themselves effectively. Despite their graciousness and concern for others, they can be quite strong and forceful, despite their ability to subordinate themselves to others and to common
goals.
So, yeah, they are quite a dichotomy, aren't they? A 9 wing 8, but I've known some, and
do you think they're more likely to be ISFPs? Like, do you think 9 wing 1's more likely to be ISTJ and 9 wing 8's more likely to be ISFP?
Well, I think my father is a 9 wing 8.
Oh, okay.
So.
What's his MBTI type?
ISTJ.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is the rest of it. Goals, they can be courageously independent.
Despite an easygoing manner, they can have formidable tempers, although these are rarely resorted to. Thus, healthy persons of this subtype give the impression of strength and good nature, sensuality, and power. The 9 with an 8 wing wants to engage with people and things in the world more than the other subtype. They enjoy socializing, have a wonderfully dry sense of humor, and may have numerous skills, although they tend not to promote themselves. They are concerned with their immediate needs and circumstances and more accepting of people as they are. 9s with an 8 wing often enjoy the helping professions, consulting, sales, and services, and can be very effective in business, especially in negotiations or working in human resource capacities. Average people of this subtype compartmentalize their emotions completely. While their self-image is one of peacefulness, they may occasionally be quite aggressive without realizing the extent of it. Unfortunately, the 9...
Okay. With an 8 wing.
With an 8 wing is more likely than the other subtype to get caught up in a kind of sensual indolence, which can interfere with their ability to stay directed. They can be complacent, even lazy, about achieving success in some areas of their lives, while being extremely competitive in others. If they are not intellectually gifted, they may seem slightly slow-witted, good-natured, but thick-headed. Well, that was rude. When was this? Because neither the 9 nor the 8 is a particularly intellectual or thinking component. These people have strong elemental drives for psychological and sexual union with the other. Their self-interest is bound up with material comfort. They can be more stubborn and defensive than 9s with a 1 wing, and although usually easygoing and pleasant, people of the subtype can have bad tempers. Others cannot predict what will set them off, but usually can see their anger building. Typically, people of this subtype lose their tempers when others interfere or interrupt their sense of well-being and peace of mind. They can be blunt and explosive, but just as suddenly they return to their normal, placid self.
That actually is a lot like me.
Okay.
When their protective instincts are aroused.
They do not wish to hurt others so much as protect themselves and their property. Average persons of this subtype can become belligerent and confrontational toward others, but with little long-lasting personal animosity. Their greatest ire is aroused against those who attack their families, their beliefs, or their way of life. But once the crisis has passed, they are apt to sue for peace, making allies of their former enemies. As they deteriorate, 9s with an 8 wing tend to dig in their heads, refusing to listen to or cooperate with anyone, threatening to disturb their safe routines. And we don't need to probably read about unhealthy 9s. I don't know. You want to?
Not relevant.
Very good.
Well, they could do. You're reading very well, Crystal. You're the best person at reading out.
Well, if you don't want to, here's the 9 with a 1 wing.
So before we go on to the 1 wing, I had a question about that. You said that sounded a lot like you. Was there anything that stood out?
I can see, well, and this might just be how I am too, but I can see myself in everything at some stage in my life, in everything read there. Some of the parts that were less self-controlled I can definitely see in my younger self. Yeah, I had a terrible temper as a child. Really bad.
Ooh,
but it wouldn't show up except so rarely that it was generally just a massive shock, like there was some kind of an episode that happened, an event, and then it was over. And then it was just funny to me. And then making friends with the former enemies, that has been a constant throughout my life.
Interesting.
I don't find myself having any kind of glaring conflict like that anymore. That would have been very early in my life.
Okay, that makes sense.
I'd just like to show people that that description comes from this book, Personality Types, the Enneagram for Self-Discovery, by Don Richard Riso. I think he's rest in peace now, Russ Hudson.
Yes.
So that's the book to get, folks. And all good stuff.
So, are you curious about the 1 wing?
Yeah.
Okay. So go back to that first part, or do you want? The traits of the 9 and those of the 1 tend to reinforce each other. 9s repress their emotions to maintain their impulses, are strong in people. Maintain their peace. While ones repress their emotions to maintain self-control. Thus, this subtype tends to be more cerebral than the 9 with an 8 wing, more interested in ideas, symbols, and concepts. In this subtype, we see people who are more emotionally controlled and cooler than those in the other subtype, although they may well display moments of anger and moral indignation. Out of the blue, the complacent, agreeable 9 becomes critical and sarcastic. Both subtypes of the 9 are attracted to questions of philosophy and spirituality, but in the 9 with a 1 wing, there is a distinctive idealistic quality to their beliefs. And we'll skip the noteworthy examples. Healthy persons of this subtype possess enormous integrity and are extremely principled. Their great common sense helps them to be wise in their judgments, particularly about others. They are alert to issues of fairness and objectivity when they are called out on to act or to judge situations. Healthy 9s with the 1 wing are wonderful at synthesizing different schools of thought and sorting out the common threads between them. They can be highly imaginative and creative, seeking to express and share their visions of an ideal world. Healthy people here are interested in sharing what they know and appreciate the ideas and discoveries of others. They tend to be sunny, friendly, and reassuring, but with a certain seriousness about their ideals. They enjoy teaching and may be moral leaders, teaching most effectively by their example. The 9's openness is combined with the 1's objectivity. The result is simplicity and guilelessness toward others, peacefulness and moderation towards themselves. This subtype makes a good friend or therapist, balancing the 9's non-judgmental listening with one's wisdom and desire to give helpful
advice.
Wow, I saw some. So what I did during that, folks, is I put. Well, they'll know because they're. If anyone, what I did is I put the camera on Imogen to see her reactions as you went through various bits of the. A little bit sneaky there to see her. See, now I've told her. Now she might. Don't get self-conscious, Imogen. It's just to see the reactions. So.
What did you make of that? Anything that you relate to, or was that a clear difference?
Well, I'm just thinking that. That also seems
a good fit.
Very much like how I have appeared to others from what I've been told. Before my brain injury, people used to tell me I was aloof. But now I don't have any emotional inhibition at all. But that's really just since the brain injury just knocked that out. But I used to be just extremely self-controlled in my emotions. And feelings. I don't know.
Well, here's the average person's.
It's difficult when you relate to both. It was easy for me to pick my wing because I didn't have anything resonate for me about type 3. And so as a 2, it was really fast that my wing would be 1. So those of you who didn't have that, like Ben or Jonathan, did either of you feel torn between the wings?
I wish I had a 3 wing.
One wing name was much more easy for me to see. Like one wing name was quite easy, yeah, when I read the 2 of them.
Well, and because you are an Enneagram 1 yourself, what do you think of that description that I just read? Is there anything in it that you relate to as a 1?
I relate to quite a lot of it, but I think a lot of it sounds quite NF-ish. The thing I tried to do ideas and symbolism, and I don't like a therapist. It sounds quite INFJ actually. This whole thing. But, yeah, I've actually had moments where I've wondered if I was a 9-wing 1 instead of a 1-wing 9, because the 1-wing 9 is supposed to be the type 1s are usually quite hard working, and I don't feel them hard working at all. But I relate to the 1 description and the 1-wing 9 overall, whereas with the 9, I really relate more to the 9-wing 1, but not so much the rest of it.
Okay, so you relate to the NF aspects and anything that talks about like the ideals or
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that, I think, because 1 is my wing and I also have a 1 in my tri-type, the only parts that I read that kind of stand out as 1-ish that relate is where it is more structured or trying to accomplish things, like it's very more goal-oriented, that type of the 1 aspects I relate to. So maybe that's how you could divide the 1 versus the 8, because the 8, the temper, or it's kind of more social, where the 1 is going to be a little more rigid. So to me, that's very different from each other.
It can be a bit more complicated in specific instances, but
as far as trying to choose between your wing,
yeah,
I feel like I'm both.
Okay. And that's very 9 of you.
well, read through the average description, because that was only a healthy 9.
Okay.
That was only a healthy 9 we want.
Well, I mean, just to give an example, the lens through which my children's curricula, for instance, is viewed, facilitated by me, is through philosophy, and we study philosophy, and I really enjoy it. I really like making sure that my thought processes are all very properly integrated, and yeah, that's really important to me, and definitely spirituality as well.
Okay.
Well, it did say though that both the 9-wing 1 and the 9-wing 1 will be like that. It's just the 9-wing 1's a bit more so. But they can both be like that, especially when they're healthy.
Well, I used to be more rigid, Like, I think I used to be more like the 1, and since my brain injury, I'm more like the description of the 8 wing.
Okay. That probably makes sense. That's kind of what's maybe shifted. And so because you were wing 1 for so long, that will still feel familiar or natural to you, but then you're seeing examples of new behaviors that match that wing 8 more. Okay. Yeah. So we can go on about the wing 1, and I wonder, it would be interesting to see how, as you continue to recover, if you shift towards that wing 1 again, or if you've integrated the changes, you know, and that your type is changed.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely, there are some very big differences. Just when you read the 9 wing 8, I was noticing that those are, wow, I relate to that, but that's new. Those are new behavioral and thought-based changes.
I think that's kind of cool. I hope you like the changes. I hope it's not like, but do you feel like that's an improvement?
Yeah,
like
I actually
do. It's kind of like a growth. Yeah.
I like myself more now, but I do, but I also don't experience my former self in a primary way. It seems like that was my twin sister and she died, but I know everything about her life. Yeah.
So it doesn't feel like yourself anymore. You don't relate to her.
No.
I think that's actually probably a blessing. Do you know what I mean? Like, it would probably be more painful to feel like I'm not me, I need to be me, but to feel like this is me and that was old me. I think that's probably better.
Yeah, like a really significant severance. There was no transition. It was just in a moment. I just changed.
Wow.
So, yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Imogen, you mentioned spirituality. Are you a religious person?
I don't have any specific, like I'm not an adherent to any particular religion, but yes, I'm very spiritually oriented. And I definitely have practices that are a part of that are very important to me.
So we could have a brief digression where we do inside the comedy brain of the ISFP and see how well you connect.
This is ISFP's brain according to, where's this from?
I don't know, but I just think it's funny. I just sort of like tried my best to find them. Eventually I got all 16 types. The funniest one is INTJ.
Huh.
How to fly.
You have your own spot in your brain just for that.
Yeah.
And magical. Squirrels?
I noticed when I'm on the ISFP page that I don't relate, and people could be mistyping, but I don't relate to a lot of the more fluffy ways of being.
Does it sound like it's an age difference? Do you think you could have related when you were younger, or never?
No, when I was younger, I was extremely diligent and hardworking, and I definitely had goals. Now I don't, but I did that. So I don't understand a lot of it. I've always been. I think part of it is too that I was raised by an ISTP, and he required that I give justification for anything I expressed. He was really super picky about that. He was on me with logic constantly. So I think I might have been more puppies and rainbows naturally if I hadn't been raised by him, but he really forced me to think clearly and rationally about everything. And that, I think, is the difference between myself and my daughter, is that I kind of only go 50% with her because I can see how I don't want to ruin that aspect of her expression and experience. Yeah. But I see like really kind of magical magical logic that happens with her.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't ever have that, but I had a pretty challenging childhood. So
Just a brief digression for a minute. So this is the funniest one in my opinion, because this is INTJ.
Cheese moves. You can't
What
compete with the
What is
cheese.
that?
Complex
What
thoughts that
are-
nobody else understands because they aren't intelligent enough.
Oh no. Yeah.
Despising
Thanks.
mortal beings.
There are there's scientific schemes to
Oh,
interact with people.
maybe. Oh no. Their secret love to cats.
Mm.
Known love to machines. That's funny.
see, I don't really like cats. This is another ISFP divergence.
Yeah.
They're fine. I like livestock and working animals.
Oh.
No, this is an ITG's brain, it's not your brain.
Yeah.
Did you work with livestock growing up? Okay.
No,
Oh.
but I used to live in the bush, and
Mhm.
we had a farm, and so I had pigs and chickens and geese and dogs. I think that's it.
Hmm.
That was my former life. I can't do that anymore. I'm too fragile.
Yeah. So I think because you had that influence of helping you focus on being more logical, do you think it increased your appreciation for extroverted logic? Or how did that work? Did you and your father's logic ever not align? I would think that that would be difficult.
Well, yeah, because there were things that really matter to me, like my values, and just didn't have the same ones. And so for him, the logic didn't include relationships and how people experience what he thought would. Every time I see the text, I get confused about what I'm saying.
Oh.
So he didn't remember that human relationship and behaviors also have to be considered when making decisions or working on a system. There's always the human element, and he often would forget about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that would be where that's basically the only clash we had. That,
Imogen, you mentioned your values. So besides the people that, it depends if you want to talk about it or not, but like, what would you say your values are?
Oh no, I have to put them in words. Well, I would say that my highest aspirations are love and freedom, and that the means to those are going to be intertwined with truth. So basically, all of my values are related to attaining to those ultimate sort of utopian goals. So, I mean, they're going to be basic things like behaving in a compassionate way, or I don't think there's anything that can be said that it's impossible to say with compassion and consideration of the other person and kindness.
So
I don't know. They come out in my actions. Like my values are really behavior based. Like if you spent a few days with me, you would know what my values are. But I'm not very. I guess I'm not. I don't think about them verbally.
And that fits very much in with Kersey and what Jeff would say. For the artisan temperament, it can be summed up with one value: freedom.
Yeah.
Thing that one.
Yeah, love fits into freedom. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, especially love for the SFPs. So yeah.
Yeah.
A big heart and freedom to act. And this is something I asked Kristen that you might identify with, is that she wants to be kind and is very kind, but she doesn't want to feel obligated in order to be kind. The way that an ISFJ feels obligated. So there's a difference there in temperament.
I always find that fascinating when two feelers talk and they use the same words, but in their life it looks nothing the same. You know, because an NF will resonate with the importance of love and freedom, but the way that you probably define it inside is different.
Yeah, it is very different. Okay, so here's an example. I've probably told this one to you, Ben, but it's such a good one. Yeah. I was assembling a piece of furniture with my INFJ son, and he's really good at that stuff. He looks at it, he understands how it works, he's ready to put it together. So he was helping me. And before the brain injury, I didn't have any trouble with that either, but now I do because I can't visualize. But anyway, I was looking at the manual, and the drawing was incorrect. It was really poorly done. It was done so that you had to look underneath the piece of furniture up at it, which makes it so that you'd have to reverse that to put it together, because you can't build something from the top down.
That would be horrible.
Yeah, that's how the drawing was done. And I said, this is a terrible illustration. I used to do technical illustration, so this was actually my work, was to do technical drawings that help people to understand how things go together. So when I was looking at it, I was looking at it from the perspective of knowing how it should have been done. So I said, this person whoever did this didn't understand, and they should be fired. And my INFJ son, he just looked at me and he said, but Mommy, that person has a family, and that helps them to have a house and food and to take care of the family. So it would be better if you just showed them how to do it right, and then they wouldn't have to be fired, and the drawing would be correct.
I love that example.
That's way better.
That's awesome.
You could have said, think of all the marriages that could have broken up because of arguments over the diagram.
Mr. Debate, here we go. The other side. But I love that. That's perfect.
Yeah.
It's a really great illustration.
Yeah. So in this, see, I wouldn't have said to that person, to them, I would never have said, you should be fired. Of course. I would have, but anyway, that's
adorable.
So did you end up making the thing upside down so it would match?
No. No. I don't remember exactly. I think we looked at one that had already been assembled, and then sort of worked backward from what it's supposed to look like on the outside.
Ah.
Yeah.
It worked.
Time consuming. I've built furniture together with my husband, and it's so time consuming.
Yeah.
So do you? Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Wing 9 or 9 wing 1 from before, and probably still sometimes, because I think a lot of type 1. It's about values. It's about ideals. You know, and that's what matters for you.
Both wings can have ideals. It's just a question of what those ideals are.
Exactly.
Wing's ideals are perhaps a bit more self-absorbed ideals, whereas wing's a bit more idealistic.
Yes.
Right. So that drawing upset me, not because it was an inconvenience to me, but I immediately thought, this drawing has been distributed all over the world. And there are people everywhere who are not able to put this piece of furniture together because this was incorrect and there was no quality control. So there's this whole broken system that is now affecting people all over the world.
Yeah.
So, David Kersey would he had like the 3 A's for artisans. He had artistry, you tick that box, adaptability, and audacity. So do you think those 3 things fit both yourself? Maybe more in the past, maybe more audacious. I don't know how audacious you've been.
Well, how would you define audacious?
Well, you see, I think he's sugarcoating it a bit. It's like reckless, I would see it as, but then I'm biased. They would
Right.
say, no, I'm being audacious. Like being forthright, the ability to see an opportunity and take it, whereas other types might hesitate because they see it as too risky. Where I think you said before, when you said your son, he's able to calculate the risk quickly and then do it. So you would say he's audacious.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I packed up, I got rid of all of our stuff and packed everything into a 4x4x8 trailer and moved us into the remote north because I thought it would be good for us. And I have a lot of reasons for that, so it wasn't uncalculated, but most people looking at that, especially from where I came from, they thought I was insane, that I would bring my children up to a place that is so remote and, to live in the bush.
With enormous giant animals that are so big that Imogen tells me that a little bit of me can't quite believe it when she talks about moose that are like 10 feet tall.
Yeah, they are.
Wow. I tell you, you take a photo of that, and like put them have them next to something, put that on Facebook. That'll amaze people.
There definitely are pictures. I could probably find some. I don't go looking. I can't even hike anymore. So,
Right.
And I don't know, if you see a moose face on, you don't really want to pull a camera out.
True. Unless they're far away.
Yeah.
And I suppose in the last 16 months you've like demonstrated your adaptability, and before then.
Yeah, I'm definitely very adaptable. I thought I was before, but this has been a brand new level of adaptability. Like right now, I don't even know all of my deficits because I've accommodated myself by moving my life around in so many ways that I realized I'm actually going to have a hard time describing how my life is affected from my perspective, because what I did was I just rearranged my entire environment and the way that I do things. So now I'm able to do things, but I wouldn't be able to if I were doing them in a way that most people do.
But that's how you would describe it, is to say what you've changed, what you rearranged. Like when you said that you almost studied music, when you were considering it, was music something that just came naturally? Did you have just like a really good ear? Could you create music by yourself spontaneously?
Oh, yeah. And I still do. I actually discovered...
I envy that, by the way. It's the coolest gift in the world.
Well, that's one of the things that you get in sociology is INFJs actually envy ISFPs.
Well, done and done, because I do envy that.
Wow.
It's a beautiful thing. I wish I had that gift. It's very fun to be around people that just are made of music, It just comes out of them. My daughter is like that. She can just sing little melodies that are just wonderful, and I'm like, where'd you hear that? She's like, oh, I was just singing. It's just in her head.
That's their superpower. The ISFP is superpower.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I'm always full of music and have always been. The reason I didn't really pursue it was because, part of it was that my parents were really opposed. So but they couldn't stop me from doing visual arts because I can get paper and pencils. But they did prevent me from studying music to a level that would have allowed me to carry on further at that point. So, but actually, I have a piano that I just obtained after my brain injury, and a dulcimer, and I just taught myself how to play them. I used to play ukulele and guitar, but yeah, I found a book of 2 albums of music that I had written before my injury. I don't remember it, so I'd have to redo the music. But
yes, apparently now George Formby, he was in some dodgy films, but he was a fantastic banjo ukulele player, and he could and as he was stringing it, he could alternate the rhythms as he was playing it, and like professional ones have said that that was absolutely amazing what he could do with the banjo ukulele. And getting back to the adaptability is that because what Crystal might not know is that Imogen has an ISTJ brother. And is he involved in the visual arts or as a director? And you could like talk about the difference between you in like your adaptability versus his.
Okay, so he used to work for CBC. He used to be an art director, but he has since started his own production company. So he does film production.
Okay.
But okay, so the differences between us. Well, I have to say at this point in my life, I'm 39 and he's 36. So at this point, we really have a lot of similar perspectives on life, but we came about it in a completely different way. So we can always talk about something and agree, but our reasons are completely different. And we've had one conflict in our entire adult lives. One, and it was over in a couple of minutes. It went like this. I said, you know, I feel like you're taking advantage of me in this way, and I would like you to consider how what you're asking of me is really going to require, because it's not just a simple request. It's a big thing, and I've been doing this for a little while for you, and I'd like you to contribute more to the effort that's required for this to happen. And he said, okay, and then did.
That's not the ISTJ, right?
That's it.
If that was an ISFP, I imagine an ISFP being that calm. I think probably an Enneagram type 9.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was really like that.
Matter of fact.
Yeah.
But yeah, apparently he would. That just in terms of that, I think you said that he was like very procedural. Like, yeah. I was thinking of that comparison between how procedural he was and your adaptability.
Right. Okay. So just an example. When he has young children and white furniture, which for me, who has white furniture with little kids? But it stays white. But even before that, he would have he had cherry floors, and he would put carpet runners down. So you had to walk on the runner, because if you stepped onto the cherry floor, it would scratch it. So he was always very calm about it, but very specific. Like, no, you just walk on the carpet runners. That's all. And I had my little kids, and I said, but I don't understand how. So you can't walk on the floor? So how do you play? And he said, well, you just stay on the carpet. Like, it made perfect sense to him. Okay.
Yeah. I think my daughter might turn into that parent. I don't know. We'll see.
It was like, so funny.
That is really funny. So what did they do when their babies were like first learning to walk?
They moved.
Okay.
That's what they did. They bought another house and had a different floor, and that was how they dealt with that. Even had their dog. His back legs became paralyzed, so they got him one of those dog wheelchair things where the dog can run around on wheels.
Yeah.
They even trained their dog to stay on the carpet.
To stay off the wood. Wow.
Yeah.
It's important, apparently. It's very important.
Well, if your floors are cherry, then yeah.
I guess so. I won't be getting cherry floors. Now I know.
No, get oak and stain it cherry.
Yes. Then who cares? That's really interesting. Yeah. Huh. So he's a producer, though?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know enough about the job.
Well, we both did technical and scientific. We both did technical and scientific illustration in college, and so we both understand that kind of stuff.
And I think you told me how you both approached the same subject completely differently. Like that he was a bit more So how did he approach it versus you? Like that same thing of technical drawing. Do you think the temperament came out in your approaches?
No, not really, because well, not initially, because we were both taught the same procedures, and so I followed those until I knew them well enough to start breaking the rules, which was really the only reason I took that program, is because I knew if I can learn all the rules, I can diverge from them competently, whereas he took it to learn the rules so he could apply them. So that's different. Because that's what I did. As soon as I was finished school, I just went into fine art, and I did commercial illustration. But it wasn't very technical. I just I knew how to set a drawing or painting up in that way to be accurate. But he still does that because he's doing...
John has to go. Goodbye, Jonathan.
Yeah, so that's the advice to SPs. Learn it now, you can break the rules in future. Just learn it now.
Yes. Yep, I really think that is, and actually that's one of my perspectives with my children, is to make sure they know the like the structure, whatever we're learning. I want them to know the underlying structures, and then they can go in any direction they like.
Do you feel like it was your dad who helped you determine that, or like why did you not have the initial SP aversion to learning structure at all? You know, that took discipline that is usually you have to coerce.
Yeah, I think it really was my dad. Honestly, because if I look at really, really early in my life, I would start doing something, and he was always saying, "No, do it like this," because and then he would show me why. Always showing me why things work the way they do. Because he's very stereotypical in his mechanical understanding and systems abilities. So he was always telling me those things and showing me. And
that's key. For the artisan, showing them.
But what a gift to you, because it was a foundation for you to really thrive and develop your talents naturally. That's cool.
Yeah, very. Yeah, I do. I definitely appreciate that. Because, and again, like I try it with my daughter, but again, I try not to go too far, because I do think that there were parts of me that were lost through that process. And some of that, I think, has come back since my brain injury.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm a lot more... I guess it's not as important to me that things are as structured as before. And I'm more emotional. And that was definitely no. I mean, my father could not handle a show of emotion at all. So when I was growing up, I was really super controlled. Like self-controlled. Because I didn't want to upset him. So. But my daughter is not. She just... she everything out whenever it comes out. And yeah, the sulking really gets me.
More so than the explosions. Like you prefer an emotional explosion.
Yeah, I can't grasp the sulking, and it's funny because she'll have her blow up, which is fine, and but then she'll go off and sulk.
That's so backwards. I would rather they quietly sulk than explode.
I can deal with the explosion, but the sulk is just absence and silence, and there's nothing to work with, I guess.
Yeah, I
don't feel like I'm supposed to do something. When someone's sulking, I think, oh, they just need their time. They just need their space. But when they're exploding, suddenly it's affecting me, and I feel like I'm supposed to help.
That's funny. Yeah, and my INFJ son is the same. He is really uncomfortable with explosions. But I have 4 out of 5 of my children are introverted. So in general, the whole house is pretty quiet and self-reliant and.
Something the audience should know is, I think Imogen, is it right that you have banned television from your children?
Oh, we don't have television, no.
No.
But I don't ban it. That's a different thing.
Oh,
Ban
well.
it, have it.
If they were at
Yeah,
a friend's
okay.
house, it wouldn't be taboo.
I'll tell you,
Right.
that is like parenting. Like, so I'm gonna take you into the bush, away from everybody else. No television. I'm gonna teach you. So you've put so much effort into educating them. Like you go and going that extra mile to like make everything perfect.
I think I have a friend who must be ISFP because she's very artistic and very musical. She writes music just naturally, and she has moved up into an area that's very rural, and she
In the
homeschools.
mountains.
Yes,
like
and she
Curtis
homeschools her
profile.
children. And I love visiting her. She's an inspiration to me. I really enjoy our time together. But our lives are very different because she is a homeschooling mom, and she doesn't have as much of the obligations of, you know, like, oh, we have these classes and things we have to drive our kids to and things like that. So it's much more of a serene experience, and you do have that freedom to just enjoy your space. But I think it just depends on the temperament. For like an ESFJ, they probably would go crazy in the bush without TV or radio or, you know, something socially connecting them.
And it depends on, let's be honest, how intelligent and erudite the person is that can teach their children all these different subjects up to a high level.
Yes.
So
Well, my mom is ESFJ, and she could not stand the amount of isolation that was natural to my ISTP dad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're still together in a long time, but that was always a major issue for her. Just felt cut off.
Yeah. Do you have any extroverted children?
I have one. He's an ESFP, and he finds it very difficult to live with a bunch of introverts.
I think he wants to be a comedian, is that right, Imogen?
Yep. Yeah.
I have a book that you might find useful. Comedy Writing Step by Step by Jean Perret. It's very highly regarded, this book.
What is it called? Comedy writing? I'm writing
Yeah,
this
the
down.
New Comedy Writing Step by Step by Jean Perret, an Emmy Award winning writer, and he's like worked with a load of big comedians over the years. He wrote for Bob Hope, and it's like the 25th anniversary of this book, so it's like a really famous
Okay.
book, and it's got lots of exercises in there. But the way he describes humor, it does have a bias towards like NE and SI, because he talks about funny images in the mind and all that sort of stuff.
How old is your son that wants to be a comedian? How old?
Okay, so I just had a long period of being
I did. I asked you how old your son who wants to be a comedian is.
Oh, he's 11. He's turning 12 in a few weeks.
Okay. And is he the oldest?
No, he's the second. Mine are really close. They're 13, 12. And then my ISTP is turning 11. But that's, okay, so he's 10. So we have 13, 12, 10, 8, and 5.
Cool.
Are you gonna get some comedy records for him, Imogen, or does he watch stuff on YouTube?
Well, this is the funny thing. Like, I have a very dark sense of humor. So I like a lot of really offensive comedy, and so I don't show this to my children. So I'm actually very surprised that he wants to be a comedian because he's seen very little of it. Like I like Louis C.K. and Billy Connolly and.
Oh, Billy Connolly, yes. There's if you just see the lyrics of Supergram, which are, because he wrote the lyrics to it. I mean, it's like one of the lyrics is, it is like he actually wrote, she makes them look like a bunch of fairies. She's got more bottle than United Dairies. Stand back, watch out, it's Supergram. And then it's like she makes them look like big girls' blouses. She's got more front than a row of houses.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
And then it's like one of the lyrics is, she'll do things that you never see your granny do, and then the Scunner Campbell will come in and say, there's nothing that she can't do. So it's like all these innuendos in like the lyrics.
That's so funny. I haven't seen it.
It's it's hard to English people to understand because it's got a lot of people with Geordie accents, and it's quite hard to understand. Because it's a bit like, why, hey man? And it's like, what?
yeah. So he's I always think about him getting a little bit older and being more independent, and just discovering that actually the world is full of people that are extroverted, and
Yeah.
it's like a strange crucible experience for him where he's like under fire all the time.
Right, so it's Jim Perry with double R, just to make sure that's right.
I read it.
Yeah, and then the guy at the back, this Joe Medeiros with the head writer on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, and he said here, my career all started because of this book and my willingness to do every bit of the step-by-step work that Jim Perry has so marvelously laid out in it. So it's like a book that has like been out. So this was the 25th anniversary of the book, and it was a Writer's Digest book club selection, and a Quill Driver books, great books for writers selection. So I better read it all. I've only read a small fraction of it. I'm absolutely terrible. And this is what I keep telling people who think I'm Enneagram 5. And I says, no, if I were Enneagram 5, I would have read all these books I've bought. I'm a wannabe 5.
Oh.
So,
Yeah, I think I'm going to check that book out for him because he doesn't like reading for the sake of reading at all.
right.
So it's always a challenge to find books that he'll enjoy reading. But it has to have some sort of practical output for him.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it is. I mean, he read a book by Ethan Hawke. It's called Rules for a Night, and it's just about being a gentleman. But he read that, he couldn't put it down. He was so interested in it, and anything that has to do with his like improvement of himself and his expression, he just soaks that up.
Right. So it's got like different exercises. So it's like exercise 1, collect 50 jokes from any source, and then sort of like go through them, analyze them. So exercise 1 is basically analyzing jokes. A load of jokes, say 50 of them, look for the patterns. Exercise 2 is make a list of 10 adjectives that you might use in comedy writing. This should be very simple, because you know certain words are funnier than others. Then we've got exercise 3. Collect a series of at least 30 unusual photos. And then write humorous captions to those photos. Then we've got exercise 4. Collect at least 20. I've not read this before. This is good stuff. Collect at least 25 cartoons that you especially like. And then recaption the cartoons with lines of your own. You don't have to limit yourself to one caption for each cartoon. Exercise 5. Create at least 25 cartoons of your own, using common items as your characters. These items can be simple geometric shapes, household items, objects that exist where you work, fruits and nuts, whatever. I know this sounds bizarre now, but I'll explain it more in the example. And then it gives the example of like this, but you could maybe help with this. And then exercise 6. Write 101 Tom Swifties. A Tom Swiftie is a joke that uses a slightly different double meaning for an adverb. The Tom Swift series of children's books, maybe you could get that, the Tom Swift series of children's books. The Tom Swift series of children's books use this grammatical structure liberally, and now we're going to turn this same structure into gags. Tom Swiftie does spelt S-W-I-F-T-I-E.
Oh, okay.
Tom Swift. And so, yeah, and he's actually put 101 Tom Swifties in here, and I can give an example. No one seems to invite me to go hunting anymore, Vice President Dick Cheney said. Sorry, Vice President Dick Cheney said aimlessly.
Well, okay, so this is something he does naturally.
Mm.
And one of my memories that I have of him really young, and I have a picture of it too, it's very cute, was his INFP brother came out of the bedroom. I may have told you this too. Came out of the bedroom and he put his hands up like this, and he said, I'm a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And Oliver came bursting out of the room. Oliver is the 11-year-old. He came bursting out of the room, and he put his arms out like this, and he had a hat on, and he was just totally spread eagle, and he said, and I'm a talking mango! And this is this is the difference between the two. And that has followed him his whole life. He writes comic books that are Mr. Talking, and then he just puts some kind of an object in there. And he writes whole stories, and they're always comedic. So he's actually doing some of this already.
So this, for me, the way he describes comedy, I think is probably like an NTP or something, because I emphasize. So for instance, he does recognizing relationships and ironies. So relationships is a bit like NE, and then visualization and imagery, and then facility with words. And then he talks about a large component of gags is the things that it creates in the mind. So it's like he's talking about relationships between ideas and things that go on in the mind. So it's like NE and SI. And so I suppose a bit like, and then this is the NE set. So relationships and ironies. It's the most comedy, as I've stated before, is a combination of two or more ideas. It's the relationship of these ideas that generates the humor. And then here's one. The elderly don't drive that badly. They're just the only ones with the time to do the speed limit.
Yeah. Aww.
And then something about old people. He wrote. And then it's something about why old people don't drive very quickly. He wrote, probably anywhere they're going, they've already been.
Oh. You know, up here, like anywhere in the north, we're all Sunday drivers.
Yeah.
And oh yeah, it's everyone here drives slowly. Except when we have this rash of people from the south coming up, then all of a sudden for a couple of years we'll have people racing from like one stop sign to the next, which is just ridiculous because there's so few streets, and you know there's just not a lot of people here, and nobody from here is in a rush, so you can always tell when we have outsiders.
I'm so on this. I should read this book. It's gold. And I think he's like alpha, because I can usually recognize humor that's NTP. I mean, it's a bit here. It's like, if carrots are so good for the eyes, how come I see so many dead rabbits on the highway? So it's like, again, here is an observation that no one quite ever made before. Comedian Richard Lenny did, though, in a concise little gag, but it says so much because the relationship and irony not only are recognized but are beautifully expressed. So again, the NE part of the relationships, but then he talks about the SI part, that usually it's like a funny image in the mind. So for instance, many jokes are pictures. That is to say, with words we create an image in the listener's mind. Notice this Rita Rudner line. When my husband and I are in the car, I usually let him drive, because when I drive, he has a tendency to bite the dashboard.
Okay.
And then he goes, as soon as you hear this joke, you may immediately get a picture in your mind of this poor fellow chewing on the car's interior. When we create an image, the distortion or ridiculousness of that image generates the humor. That's why puns have the reputation as the lowest form of humor. I have worked with clients who refuse to buy any gag that depends on pure wordplay. Words are powerful tools of the humorist, as we'll see in the following section, but comedy that depends on wordplay alone often does not create a graphic image in the mind of the listener. Therefore, it's usually not as funny, clever maybe, but not as funny. So it's like, this is why I like the the SJs can have a similar humour to the NPs because they're good at imagining things as well.
Yeah.
And then
So,
you go on.
are you familiar with Louis C.K.?
No, but I think Jeff would agree that he's like an SP
He
comedian.
is. I keep seeing him listed as an INFP, and there's no way. He's definitely an ISFP. Definitely.
It's like anyone who's creative gets tagged as an N, but it's like, I mean, Jeff's convinced me. Paul McCartney, ISFP. Yes, John Lennon, an NF, but Paul McCartney, an ISFP. Like, and he thinks Bob Dylan's an ISFP. Just from like the things he said in interviews about why he wrote particular things. And so here, more stuff on SIs, I think here. This is also one reason why humour is so subjective. Some people love a particular joke or story, others won't appreciate it at all because the image is different in each person's mind. The joke is not the collection of words, it's the scene that appears in the listener's mind as a result of those words. Skillful use of words will create a stronger image, but it is usually the image that produces the humour. So he is going towards a particular type of humour, in my opinion. But in my opinion, it's also the best kind of humour because it's like NTP humour. But then he also does stuff about words, like with the Tom Swifties, relies on double play. So, for instance, I could do a simile gags. Donald Trump changes position more often than an indecisive porn star.
Oh dear. Oh.
And there's another one. Barack Obama said, that's from the Greg Gutfeld line, and then he says, President Obama sends more mixed messages than a dyslexic texter.
Oh no. Okay, so I really like comedy that has a story.
Yeah.
I like storytellers. Whereas like I can see the humor in some, like Mitch Hedberg. A lot of one-liners and wordplay. And I see the humor in it, but it doesn't really draw me in the same way that, Louis C.K. or Billy Connolly do. Because I am able to imagine the whole scenario, and I really add a lot to it when I'm listening. But when I listen to when I watch Louis C.K., I am very aware that he is also making a lot of assumptions about what he's talking about without saying them. But they're in there because then when he says the next thing, he's making an implied reference to it without having said it before. And he carries on like that. So he tells stories exactly like an ISFP. Like, it's really, when I first heard him, I remember my former spouse said, I don't understand him the same way I don't understand you. And he's ENTP, and he finds him funny, but he said he spends most.
Oh no, it's broken. Oh, you're back. Are you back? I'll wait for her to come back. Right then. Okay. Whilst she is away, I will read a bit. Oh, you're back. Wow.
I'm back. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. ENTPs probably they think they're the funniest, and I could go along with that to a certain extent. But yeah, I like Billy Connolly as well, and he was like one of the first modern comedians. And there was so I'll read a bit more about the SI thing that you might relate to, because ISFPs are very good SI, very good, in fact probably the best of right. The mind can be extremely elastic too, which is an aid to humorists. Our minds easily accept distortions and impossibilities. Think back to some of the dreams you've had. In them you wander from place to place with no trouble. People change before your very eyes. The situations become so bizarre that you can't even relate to them coherently. Yet during the dream, your intellect accepts every outlandish occurrence without questioning it. Humorists can often use the mind's flexibility to advantage. For example, consider these lines that I once wrote for Phyllis Diller's fictitious mother-in-law in her act Phyllis called her Moby Dick. So again, he's a proper writer, Jean Perry. So here we go. Now, some of these are a bit rude, but you might like them. Talk about fat people. You ought to see my mother-in-law. She's so big, she has 2 zip codes. It's a bit cheeky these days. I've even put these. I put here. These are a bit mean these days. Then I've put the first time I met her, Fang. Phyllis called her husband Fang. Said, "Who does Mum remind me of?" I said, "North Dakota."
Oh,
I don't know. Right, here we go. I don't know what her measurements are. We haven't had her head surveyed yet. She's a nice. Here we go. Here's the one.
You're outing me. Stop it.
Well, to me, I think they're a little bit mean, but you know. But here we go. I mean,
Nice.
there we go. She's a nice woman, though. Nicest 3 acres of flesh I've ever met.
Oh.
Then we've got some more. This one I quite like. She gave me one of her old dresses. I plan to have it starched and made into a summer home. Like, the bit I love there is that have it starched, because I like the mental image of it, like it's all rigid.
Yeah, me too. That's
So
funny.
I think I give that extra points for being clever. And then we've got once she was coming to visit us, but I didn't want her staying with us. I made reservations for her at a motel. She stayed in cabins 13, 14, and 15. When you get on an elevator with her, you'd better be going down.
Oh, that's terrible. Oh my goodness.
Another one. Once she got on a bus and 6 men got up and offered her their seats. If 2 more had done it, she could have accepted.
Oh, that's awful.
I know. I know. And then he explains here. Notice the liberties I took with the imagery. First, the lady is the size of 2 zip codes. Then she becomes as large as a state. I define her as 3 acres, and the mind accepts that. In another line, she is no longer the size of North Dakota, only the size of a small house. She requires 3 motel rooms, but she can get on an elevator and a bus. My descriptions of Moby Dick would hardly be acceptable evidence in court, but the adaptability of our minds allows us to have some fun, create some comedy with exaggerated, distorted images of this lady. And then the next bit I've tagged as NE. Yet another mental phenomenon can be used advantageously by comedy writers. Audiences tend to fill in any gaps. Right, and then he talks about the bits like our minds continue an image on to its natural conclusion and supply anything that might be missing. It's this peculiarity that makes stage magic work. And then the bit, humorists utilize this tendency by leading an audience's thinking in one direction, then suddenly changing that direction. So it's like the misdirection, mislead. The classic example of this is Henry Youngman's off-cited line, "Take my wife, please." When he says "take my wife," the audience assume he's just saying, "Let me use my wife as an example," but then the next word changes the meaning entirely. The comic is literally asking someone to take his wife. We didn't expect that, so we laugh. Although sometimes you can see it coming,
Yeah.
right? And so that is always the key of not to make it too hard that the audience doesn't see it, but not to make it too easy. So there has to be some thought required, but not too much. Now, I suppose in writing, like in a novel, you can be a bit more subtle because, like, they can reread it. Then I've put NE, something like here. That indicates a thought continuing along in a certain direction and then abruptly changing direction. Oh, yeah, here's a good one. It might be a bit cheeky these days, but Dear Abby, I am 16 years old. I think I'm old enough to wear lipstick, rouge, and eyeshadow. Yet every time my mother finds it, she throws it out and punishes me. Please answer and tell me who is right. Signed, Ralph.
Aww. Poor Ralph. Aww.
There's a bit, a man who worked in a mortuary stole 157 pounds of body parts. Bail cost him an arm and a leg. I didn't think that was that particularly good. I wrote that fell flat for me. But it is another one. And then he talked about facility with words and like little word plays. And he talked about the malapropisms. Malapropisms are good examples of this. Malapropisms are those words that are almost right, but not quite. Their marriage was never constipated. Sometimes the wrong version creates a new meaning. There is almost a meaningful, if even more so than the right word. We should study history. It's part of the whole American heresy. Why do I have to contribute so much of my money to the infernal revenue?
Ben, do you intend to be recording?
Yes, I know that they're recording. It's part of my Enneagram 4 nature to do a little bit. But I want people to... Yes, I've not said anything too rude. But you can blame him. You can say old-fashioned comedian, but he's right about the NE part. But you've got Imogen here laughing, blame her.
That's what I'm saying. You're recording how horrible I am.
They're not too bad. So yeah, so I think it's a good book for your son and a good book for myself. I'm so bad. I need to go through these and brush up my skills. Because
really
yeah, I'll show you. My stage play is a little bit. I use lots of different kinds of humour in my stage play. I'll show you that off air. And in a month or two, people were able to buy the playbook of my stage play.
Oh.
I'll have it. I'll have it published on Lulu.
How exciting!
Yeah, there you go, folks. I'll show it to Imogen, and next time she's on, oh, Ben, what a great stage play that was. Right, so bye for now, folks. I'll continue to talk to Imogen for a little bit afterwards.